Welcome to the Mere Mortal interview, where sort of trying out a new series here, in the sense of connecting people with we find interesting and want to talk to. This is Alex Troll. We've actually this is the first time meeting, I suppose, and to all of those people who say Instagram is a cesspit and it's all negative comments and whatnot, you can still get good things from that because that's how we connected. And welcome to the Mere Mortals interviews.
Thank you for having me, Kieran. I appreciate it.
No worries, no worries. So, this is, I suppose, one of my first times as well doing this. So, it's going to be like a little bit haphazard, but we'll.
No worries. We'll work through it.
We'll try our best as we can. So, I suppose I just wanted to kick off, and why I was really interested in your content and what you're doing is, I saw one of the videos you posted of you in Papua New Guinea, where you were doing some mining stuff. And that might be skipping a little bit forward. So, do you want to just give us like a little introduction of yourself and how you came to Australia?
Sure. So I grew up in Canada in British Columbia. And then how I got to Australia was I went to law school in the UK. Then I went back to Canada and did an internship in the summer.
Yeah.
And then I happened to meet a guy who had studied here in Australia at a law school here, Bond up in the Gold Coast.
Yep.
And so they said the quality of the education was great. The lifestyle and atmosphere was great. So I had kind of had enough of dreary UK. And so
nice.
I applied to Bond Uni on the Gold Coast and I ended up coming here. So that's
nice,
kind of my
nice. I think I saw you worked as a roughneck as well in the Alberta, was it?
Yeah. Those are the back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that? What were you doing there?
Well, so a roughneck is the most difficult and lowest job on an oil rig. And so that was my title and that was my role. So for 2 or 3 years in my early 20s, that's what I was doing up in frozen Alberta. I'd work on oil rigs.
Yep.
And just lots of hard manual labor, long days, lots of time away from home. A lot of people are still doing it. Maybe not now because of COVID and the oil price, but it's a hard job. And,
for sure.
A lot of people out there deserve a lot of respect for doing it day in and day out.
Exactly. Definitely. Yeah. I had one stint. So for me, I actually, I got a degree in mining engineering.
Okay.
So you can actually, we have very specific here in Australia, I suppose, just because we have enough mines to sustain a degree just in that. Sure. And one of the things with that was you had to get work experience, 12 weeks work experience to actually graduate. And so I worked out in one of the 2 mines. One was like an open pit coal mine and one was underground. And I only did 12 weeks working underground on like a shift roster. So it was probably like, I can't remember exactly what it was. It would have been like 5 days on, 4 days off, 4 nights, 5 nights, or something crazy.
Yeah.
And I had less than 12 weeks of that. It was probably about 10 weeks doing that, and just like the destroying of my body through lack of sleep, changing the sleep cycles, being underground. There was a couple of days where I'd go down at dawn. So before there was light, go down there, work 12 and a half hours, come back up, and it'd already be dark. So I wouldn't see the sun for 4 or 5 days. And it was just brutal, man. I did not want to pursue that avenue too long.
No, that was kind of my launch point of, okay, I'm going to go to uni. I have to.
Yeah.
I can't be out here. That was it. It was like the best motivator ever.
Nice. Cool. So you
by the way, I want to say those long days where you go to work and it's dark and you come home, it's dark.
Yeah.
That's your average job
that's
Canada.
Just Canada. Every single day is like that. Do you notice, I suppose, like a bit of a difference between the Canadian, I guess, there's a lot of cultural differences, but there's that seasonal oppressive disorder.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, that's the one.
Seasonal affective disorder, SADS. Yeah, there's I know, like, just my own anecdotal point. I notice a difference big time.
Yeah.
Just having the sun around puts that little spring in your step, definitely.
Yeah. For sure. Need like some sort of vitamin D program in Canada where everyone just put it in the water supply or something.
Well, when I worked at the law firm there, I knew a guy who he needed to have a light in his office to just, he'd open this bright light therapy thing and just
Yeah.
stare at it for like 5 minutes or something, just to give him like a sense of life. I don't know.
Oh
But yeah,
man,
it
humans
makes
are
a
so
difference.
strange. The stuff we do, like staring at a light or going to the gym and lifting weights when sort of just moving stuff up and down. When you think about it, it's like, man, what are we actually doing?
Oh, trying to recreate our, I don't know, back to our roots or something where we
Yeah,
used to actually do things.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So you came here and you went to Bond on the Gold Coast, did you say?
yep, yep.
Yeah, and because do you have a master's degree as well? I saw you
So
have a
I have a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of British Columbia,
yeah.
and then I have a Juris Doctorate from Bond.
Okay, okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. So how do you go from doing a law degree in Bond to being in the middle of Papua New Guinea and running a gold mine?
Yeah, it's a combination of like personality and kind of goals and like long-term lifelong goals, I guess.
Yeah,
So I graduate, like just long story short, graduate law school here in Australia, moved back to Canada, and I work at a law firm in Vancouver, the same one I interned at like 2 years prior. And I was working there day in, day out, practicing construction law. And it was just kind of, it's very stable, very secure. And it was like, okay, all that work I had done for my whole life, like all the degrees and studying and everything has now I've arrived here. This is it.
yeah, yeah,
This is it. Like I'm looking around and I'm pushing paper back and forth and having conversation with like not it didn't seem I still had more I wanted out of life. That was
yeah,
kind of really what it was. And the other thing was I could see my next 5 or 10 years unfold in front of me.
yeah,
It's like if I show up, put in a good effort, a quality effort, my salary will increase every year. And 10 years from now, I'll be in the same office, maybe the other one, maybe the corner office, but I'll still be here
yeah, yeah, yeah,
doing similar things. And at that time, I just had too much fire in me still to just let that happen. And I felt like I just wasn't completely happy with it.
yeah,
So, um, when I was in law school here, I had met some people from Papua New Guinea, and they had told me the stories of how when they grew up in their villages in the mountains, they could kick gold nuggets as they were walking down the river. And that had stuck in my head. And so um, I just said, okay, this isn't working for me at the law firm here in Vancouver. And I've still got some more to give. I wanted to test myself, really. That's what
yeah,
it comes down to.
yeah,
I really wanted to test myself. I had spent my days on the oil rigs prior to that. So I knew I could really undertake a lot of hard manual labor. I knew I could work with machinery. I can operate machinery still.
yeah,
And then I had the law degree and that. And so I knew intellectually I can deal with all the international laws and shipping and contracts and agreements.
yeah,
And I wanted to combine all those skills and test them all and really push myself.
yeah,
And physically too, like I stay active, right, in my life. So sitting in my law office every day, I wasn't testing my body either. I just wasn't doing anything.
yeah, for sure.
And as an analogy, I kind of liken it to, you ever see those ads for the military on TV, and they show like they'll have someone sitting in an office in front of a computer and being like, "Oh, there's your normal engineer,"
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
they like do a montage of the guy who joined the military and he's an engineer,
yeah,
and he's like on a computer in a helicopter shooting
yeah,
a gun and all this,
yeah, yeah, doing
amazing
the
things.
obstacle courses and running around,
That's
and
right.
yeah,
That's right. So that's kind of how you end up in Papua New Guinea.
yeah. Okay.
That's the underlying motivation.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I just wanted to ask. So I have actually a very similar story in the sense that I was working in the mines for 3 years in the offices, and a very similar thing. I could see 5-10 years down the road in the sense like, okay, this would be the next position I'd get, and yeah, you're right. I at least wouldn't get to move office. I'd just move to the seat over next to me where my boss worked, and but he had, the nice corner space so he could see out everywhere. But a very similar thing. I saw exactly where that was going, and yeah, I had a similar thing where it was for me. I'd actually read a book called A Dead Bat in Paraguay when I was 16, and it's so strange because looking back and I've reread it, it's like the story of this dude who travels South America and basically like at the very start he gets some sort of like stomach bug, so he's got diarrhea the whole time. He's vomiting, he's puking, He's really struggling with the language. He can barely talk to anyone, feeling like isolated and lonely. And it's like a whole book of, sort of misery and travel. And something in that was like, man, I really want to do that. That sounds cool. So I had that same thing. And, I actually wanted to ask, with the people that you left, so obviously you had other people in the office. When you were leaving, did you have any, like, I don't know, sort of like a simmering resentment from some people where you were doing what they wanted to do, in a sense, like taking that leap of faith and, pursuing something which was very uncertain?
Okay, yes, but I want to say these guys in in the office, like my coworkers and the lawyers and the engineers and everyone in their offices around the country and the world, what they're doing is their choice, and that's great. And so, like, I don't ever want to talk negatively about it, but for me, it wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I did feel some of that because, like, you know, one guy in particular, he always talked about surfing and stuff, and oh, I wish I could. Yeah, I wish.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's do it then.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And I guess one of the things that kind of affected me, like hurt me a bit when I went to leave, is like the main partner who I respected and everything. I was like, I was explaining why I had to go, and
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't fitting me right now, and like I really appreciate everything you guys have done. And I was kind of navigating my choice, I guess, in front of him at the same time, and he kind of said, "Oh well, that's the blue collar life," and he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Whoa,
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
all right." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." Well, that's what I'm going towards. So I did feel some of that resentment in a weird way, like just negativity.
Yeah, yeah. I don't particularly like to talk about the negative as well, but I find it really interesting that have very similar people in some respects where they have that same desire, but like what separates the people who actually act on it versus the ones who I guess like stay with the traditional path in that sense. Um, yeah,
But I
I
think,
don't know.
I think some of that comes down to obligations, and that's why I say that even if they're in those roles and they're it comes down to they're sacrificing themselves and their true dreams,
Yeah,
as opposed to because they need to satisfy the obligations they've taken on, such as family, mortgages, all types of things like that. And that's a valiant reason to sit in an office every day, even though you don't want to.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So everyone has their reasons, and so like you said, I try not to judge them or talk negatively, but when you do feel a bit of the resentment, when you go and live your life like how you want and take that leap, it doesn't feel very good. But I don't like to.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's more, I suppose, sad for their part in that. Like it's having negative feelings just in general in the world isn't the optimal way for anyone to be living. So that's just an interesting little side note.
But it is, and you're right. Like I still go back. I'm friends with the firm. Like I go when I'm back in Canada, I go for lunch with them and stuff.
Yeah.
And I still see them, and I do. There's a couple of younger guys that were at this firm, and they're still there. And I do feel like possibly, I don't know, I could be reading it wrong or whatever, but I come back 3 years later, 4 years later, and they're still in the same office.
Yeah.
I'm walking in like I've done all this stuff, and that doesn't make me better or worse. I'm just saying I've lived.
Yeah. That's a feeling you can get from just from anything though. Like same with traveling, and that's not even related to like that negative aspect we were talking about. But yeah, you go away for a year and a bit, come back home, and yeah, it seems like family's still the same, friends are still the same. You've gone through this whole journey, this internal process, and you come back, and I don't know, maybe it's like a little bit egocentric. You feel like you've changed so much, but nothing else has changed.
Yeah, I think it's part egocentric, but also true, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you
Can be both.
You must therefore change if you go and do things. That's if you encounter things in life, you encounter learning and growth.
Yeah.
If you don't go and encounter anything, you don't learn and don't grow. So
yeah.
I think it's both.
For sure. So how does one go about starting did you actually start a company in Papua New Guinea with what you were doing?
Yep. Yeah. So I started it. So you can't initially own a company outright. These are just the legalities, but I don't actually own a company in Papua New Guinea. I have an agreement with a company in Papua New Guinea with my Australian company.
Okay.
So they're both my companies. It's just that's just how it works. As a non-national in Papua New Guinea, you cannot own a company.
Yeah.
You can't own more than 51% of a company.
Yeah.
So the legalities. Yeah.
So what's the process? Do you just fly there and start getting stuff sorted, or do you have to, can you do some some setting up and whatnot from home? How do you pick which gold field and which nuggets that you want to choose? And
yeah, so starting a gold mine in Papua New Guinea is like this. First, you have to go and find where you want to mine, right?
Yep.
So that means going to the country. You've got to buy a plane ticket. You've got to find a hotel. You've got to meet the right people. And then, okay, you're in Papua New Guinea. Now, where do you go? So you have to plan all these things out first and find out where am I going to go and test the land, because you can't bring in lots of expensive equipment until you've tested for gold.
Yeah.
So step one is a few trips of prospecting, it's called.
Yeah.
So you go, you show up, you bring a team of like 30 locals, and you get to the gold field, which you've already organized and found. And you find that by local knowledge usually, or previous drilling expeditions. So Papua New Guinea's got a bit of a storied mining history. So there's a lot of data with respect to where the gold kind of is.
Okay.
So you find roughly where you want to go, and then you go and start testing. And that means digging big pits, taking samples of that gravel, and then bringing it back and taking it to a lab to be tested for the quantity of gold per ton of aggregate.
Yeah. So were you looking for gold, I suppose, on the surface or relatively close to the surface? You wouldn't be going more than, 10 meters or something?
Yeah, we don't go more than 10 meters, yeah.
Yeah.
So there is gold like deeper than that, but we just keep, that's like the most economically feasible with the equipment that we have.
Yeah.
So you can test it by panning and things like that. But the real way to test so that you know what you're actually going to be mining is to dig pits deep. And so you need to learn a lot of things, like how deep the topsoil is, because there's no gold in topsoil generally.
Yeah.
So you've got to clear all the grass off and all the topsoil, and then get down to the aggregate, which is the rocks and the sands and everything. That's where all the gold is.
Yeah.
So, you do all your testing like that. You get the results back, and then you make a decision. Okay, is there enough gold now to get all this expensive equipment together? And just because you have equipment doesn't mean you're going to get gold out of the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got to put a plan together, get everything rolling. And if you think that it's good, then get a team together. You need a team. Can't do anything alone. You can't do anything great alone. That's what I've realized in doing some of the things I've done in life.
Yeah.
You need a strong team. So get your team together and then go back over with the equipment. And then there's the whole process of logistics, and because I'm in the middle of nowhere, like legit.
Yeah.
A 2-day drive into the mountains with nothing around. There's not even law and order up there.
Yeah.
So
there's I've got a friend who's from Papua New Guinea, and he's told me like some places, like you'll go like one place and it's just you shouldn't go there. There's a neighboring tribe or whatnot, and unless you know people from there, and I suppose it's a more it's tribal in a sense, where it's very small communities, right, in pockets here and there.
It's not just tribal in a sense, it's still tribal. Like it's legit tribal. And you don't really wander around without like someone from the area with you, because if you show up in the wrong spot and you're just there, well,
who knows?
They're just very unpredictable. Because still living like out of touch with civilization, really. Yes, some highways that go through the middle of the country and stuff, but that doesn't really mean much. They're very remote.
Yeah, for sure. So, do they have much in terms of laws in the sense of what you can and can't do? Like, for example, in Australia with mining, there is very extensive safety laws. There's very extensive rehabilitation and what you can and can't do with the environment. Reporting for companies, financial stuff. How does that whole system work over there?
It's the same. It's not as extreme, and it's not really regulated. So the requirements are there. Whether anyone's following you up is another story.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
kind of up to
exactly.
you being responsible or not as
Yeah,
a company operating there. Yeah, so there's safety standards and things like that, but it's not the same. You can't just like tell these guys to put on steel toe boots.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
first of all, where do you get the boots?
yeah,
Like honestly, you're so unless you bring like in advance, and we did bring some PPE and stuff like that, but unless you bring like an entire shoe store of steel toe boots as an example
yeah,
to this tribe 2 days in the middle of nowhere with a size for everyone,
yeah,
then it's
yeah.
pretty hard to
It's not going to
enforce like
happen. Yeah,
that safety standard. So
yeah,
a lot of things like that. Um, and then just dealing with different notions of, so they haven't been around equipment really ever. They haven't seen, some of them haven't seen cars before.
yeah,
So they don't know it's dangerous. And so that was actually one of the big difficulties at first as they got used to the equipment, because they'd walk right up to the excavator as it's walking along,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
it could crush them at any moment or turn around, so that was, there's always people running in and around the equipment. It was really frustrating.
yeah,
So
yeah,
um, and then as far as reporting and things like that, there is reporting requirements. You have to do a monthly record of how much gold you've got from the ground and report that to the MRA, which is the Mining Resources Authority.
yep,
And also, of course, report that to the landowners who you have the agreement with.
yep.
And that's how you divvy out the profits and things like that.
With what you were getting, were you actually getting like small nuggets, or was it just like the small quantities of like very fine particles of gold that in the ground?
We get both. Yeah,
Yeah,
we get both. So the gold that we were mining, it's called alluvial gold. And
yeah,
so it's been broken off of the mountains, because gold comes up in big veins out of the side of the mountains.
yeah,
It's been broken off over the last millions of whatever years, 13 million, 50 billion, I don't know.
yeah,
So it breaks down, runs into the riverbeds, and then gets washed down through the waters over that time frame. And so it just depends how far you are from the source, in regards to how big the gold is. So
yeah,
sometimes you can get a decent sized nugget. Other times, just the majority of it is lots of little flakes,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and then heaps of dust, lots of gold dust. So
yeah. Okay. And so how long did you have your company mining for, and do you still own it there, or like working
yeah.
with them? Yep.
So the first time we went, we were mining there for about 8 months. Then there was a massive landslide. We had some trouble with the landowners too. Okay, the first problem we had, one of many, but the
Yep.
biggest problem is once we were actually mining, things were great. Everyone's so happy we're there because we're bringing the money, and a better standard of living. But then neighboring tribes get jealous of them
Yeah.
because they have no other resources out there. And so we're giving these guys, like, we give them jobs, so they're making so much money, and then they get their profits too every month from the mining. So now this one tribe is just like loaded, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like going up, walking down 2 days to the closest market and spending this excess money. And so people see that and they get a bit jealous. And then we have people coming up because of that saying, oh, my grandfather used to grow cow plants on this land, and therefore I'm entitled to profits and I want a job. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we have massive tribal conflicts. We actually ended up having like pretty serious stuff happen where they're fighting with each other.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest issue we had. So up until that issue, we worked there for about 8 months.
Yeah.
So the whole time, another massive problem we had another miner come in and try to do mining on our leases. Like,
sort of Wild West.
Yeah, it is the Wild West. And he just rolls in with all this massive equipment, and it's like, how do you stop him, right?
Yeah.
So then we had this big legal dispute on the side because he had gone and done an agreement with some other person that's somewhat related to this land. And so now we're having conflicting points of view about who's entitled to be on the leases.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is, you asked about law out there. There is law. So my company had the rights to the mining leases, like 100%. We had the Mineral Resources Authority vouching for it, writing letters saying, yes, it's Alex's. But out there, and this will segue into something I wanted to talk about, but out there, it's the power of a story that is told that matters.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no law. So in a tribal community where there's no one reads or writes, so you can bring a letter out and you can say, this is the rights to this lease, and I therefore am entitled to mine it. As long as that story is believable to these guys, that person will win.
Yeah.
So the law doesn't matter. It's about relationships and stories that you're telling. So
yeah. And I
that
suppose
other miner, the other miner, that was the issue. He had come in and started telling stories that were contrary to the actual facts, and so it caused us trouble.
Yeah, that's interesting. I suppose one of the things that like keeps in check a lot of how we operate, I suppose, in the cities and whatnot, is that we can see like the power of the state in a sense, in that, you know, we see how things are run, we see what happens to people who don't follow the laws and whatnot. But in those sorts of contexts where, you know, they might not even be aware of, like, you know, how big Papua New Guinea is and what's going on in the cities and whatnot, it can be very hard to say, yeah, like, I have all these people telling me, like backing me up, but, you know, if there's another dude over there and he's got 3 of his friends with him, well, he appears like the more powerful or the more in the right.
It's like how blockchain works, right? Like, it's the community who is verifying my side of the story versus his community verifying his side of the story.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 different blockchains working instead of just one central true knowledge source. And so that's the problem we were having. But we worked through it, and we eventually because you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got to really worry about your safety too. Like, we had dangerous things happening. So I had to just negotiate with him and say, look, these are our leases. I don't believe anything you're saying. It's all BS. But look, you go mine on that lease. You can have it. We're not going to fight you for it. Go away and mine. And so we negotiated that way. He's happy. He had one lease, and then it was all okay. So we kept mining for, like I said, 8 months. And then the biggest thing was these jealous tribes that would come in and try to stop us from working because they were so mad that they weren't getting money. And we just couldn't handle it anymore. We were working like 4 to 7 days a month at the last 2 or 3 months. And it just isn't profitable at that point. So we actually had to take the equipment out. I had to get the military in because that's how bad the landowners did not want us to go. They held our machines. They held our machines hostage. Everything was hostage. They did not want us to leave, and like they almost didn't want us to go. I was almost like kidnapped, you know. I had the number of a helicopter ready to go, so we were gonna get mobilized out of there by helicopter. But eventually, they're all your friends at the same time. It's just a big game you're playing up there. It is dangerous, but it is a big game at the same time. And we were able to just tell them, look, we're going to go get some more supplies to continue mining, and then we will be back. But actually, I had to go down, and I got the military and the police, and we came up and got our equipment out. So,
wow.
But they had sabotaged our equipment. Like they really didn't want us to go. They took a bunch of electricals out of our excavators and the batteries and everything. So
sort of destroying the stuff that they want to keep as well.
They got a windfall from everything we left there for sure. But we got the most expensive big pieces out, and we'll be taking it to a new area. Hopefully once COVID's done. That's the next issue. Because of COVID, can't do anything. So we're just all in limbo. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So do you own that outright, or are you leasing those pieces of equipment?
We own everything except the excavator. So the excavator's on lease.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I've pretty much always heard of equipment getting leased unless you're like in the really big companies. So yeah, that's interesting.
You can't really like lease something and ship it overseas very easily. So we have to buy those types of things. And the other thing is like mining equipment. It's custom made. Some of the gold trommels, the thing that separates the like the dirt from the gold. Those are like big custom made random things, and so they're not like a cookie cutter standard excavator that's got a serial number and an identification code and all this.
Exactly.
The banks aren't really open to that type of arrangement. So for that stuff, you've got to kind of buy it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope that the COVID stuff doesn't affect us too much longer, and you can get back to doing what you do.
Everything's just in storage right now. So we'll see.
So in the meantime, it seems you've been working on another project, I guess. And I wanted to explore a bit more what Pod Union was about and what you're hoping to achieve with that.
Yeah, Pod Union's so when I was in Papua New Guinea, I had a chance to really assess, what do I really want to be doing with my life? Like, actually,
Yeah.
okay. I went to law school and I practiced, and I didn't like being a lawyer at that time, at least. Right. And okay, now I've opened a gold mine, and like, this is good, but it's pretty much hell when you're over there. It is hard.
Yeah.
It is the most trying thing I've ever done. And so I'm like, well, this isn't something I can do forever. So, and I'm not necessarily getting great joy out of this. Yes, you get a good feeling out of challenge and accomplishment, but it's not something that you can sustain over time working as a gold miner in Papua New Guinea. Definitely
For
not.
sure.
So then I realized, okay, look, I've always loved podcasting from day dot. When it first started, I was like, wow, this is great. People are discussing intellectual things in the long form. Like, there's some serious value to this stuff. And so I'd been addicted to podcasts basically for, since they started, and just been more and more into them.
Yeah.
And then being so into them, I saw weaknesses in the services that were offered for like hosting and listening and all this. And so while I was in PNG, I put a plan together to kind of solve some of the issues that I saw with podcasting.
Yeah.
And also trying to foresee the way that the industry is going. So I feel like we're moving away from central media like CNN and all these central sources, ABC, to more like democratized type of media, like your guys' operation you have going, Mere Mortals. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of guys like you doing long form podcasting or putting your point of view out there. And eventually, if you're like an honest enough, reputable enough person, you'll become a real source for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
On whatever perspective you're talking about. So with that type of underlying thinking, I started Pod Union while I was in PNG, and got that ball rolling. And so it's a place to host your podcast. It's a place to listen to your podcast, build a community, build some subscribers so that you can kind of monetize.
Yeah.
And then working in advertising in there as well. So I saw real weaknesses in the way that podcasts were that the advertising was happening on podcasts.
Yeah.
Real big weaknesses. Like, so I'm fixing that as well.
Yeah, nice. I see you've got like a review section as well. So it's not as if you're just, I suppose, doing the hosting and whatnot and acting as a company in that sense, but you're putting your own like personal touch on giving your thoughts on some. I was reading one of your posts about the Mick dojos, which are hilarious. I love that. Love those things. So that's the fake martial arts that's going on out there.
Yeah. Those guys who do like the kung fu, but they pretend like with one push of their hand, they can blow you back 5 feet.
Yeah. I've seen dudes, doing it with like a single finger. So like a hand is that's too aggressive. So like a single, like, boop, and they will, be writhing on the floor. Amazing. I haven't, I've actually been wanting to try out, like jujitsu or something like that for a while. And, that's one of the things I definitely want to ask people about when I actually go and do that. Like, how prevalent is this sort of stuff? And
well, if you look at like Jocko Willink, or I think Joe Rogan obviously talks about this stuff, but they all make fun of it. It's just like they say it shouldn't exist because it tricks people into a false sense of security. Like, there's people in those classes who believe entirely in what the teachers are teaching. It's completely false. So, you think that you're safe from those skills. If you're in a dark alley and something bad happens or whatever, you're not safe. So it's false sense of security.
Yeah. And that's, that can be actually quite dangerous as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So what are your thoughts on, like, as far as how you're progressing? Because, you mentioned before of just, I suppose, like the decentralized, making smaller, almost media outlets, but it's almost like it's a way for people to access, I guess, a lot more of your core personality and I suppose how you interact, how you behave, what you are in a sense, through these mediums. Are you looking to go down that path as well, as far as like the personal Alex being like the brand of Pod Union, or more the company sort of side of it?
The content I create now is to try to create a bit of value for people in podcasting.
Yeah.
I know I'm doing a few interviews here and there because that's just what interests me. I've always been interested in like learning new pieces of information and just people's stories. I really like stories as well.
Yeah.
So whether I take it into like a personal brand of Alex or whatever it becomes, I'm not sure. I don't really have a strategy for that yet. But if I'm open to it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't strategized to set out and create that right now. I think I have too much on like at the moment to try and do that. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I've noticed that in I suppose the couple that I have watched, which were the I can't remember his name, the guy who did the glass blowing.
Oh
That
yeah,
was really
Mark Elliott.
intriguing. Yeah, yeah, that was really intriguing. I liked seeing what he was doing as far as, I guess, not just the physical act of creating the glass, but like why he was doing it, how it's done. Yeah, that whole
Yeah.
story behind it is very intriguing.
Yeah, he was talking more about like the artist, right? It's not so much glass blowing, it's why. It's because he likes to turn the abstract into, I don't know, create the abstract with his hands type of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Just while we're on the topic of stories, I'm guessing you would have read Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Oh, I'm reading it right now.
Ah, okay, nice, nice. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it resonates with me entirely because I see myself in it. I
Yeah,
really do. That whole hero story, I'm like, oh my God, like this is what I'm like living. Like the whole Papua New Guinea thing and having to go out and try to
yeah.
conquer, and then all of the points that he points to. Yeah, I think it's a great thing. The reason I picked it up to read it is because I'm trying to write a story, which is much
Okay, nice.
so I'm writing a podcast about my PNG adventures.
Yep,
Um, but writing a story is a much different task than writing business correspondence, for example.
yep.
So I needed to learn the devices of story, which is Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, for sure. And so are you planning on doing that in just the podcasting format, or
Yeah.
potentially as a book as well, or if?
Oh, yeah, probably a book as well, because it lends itself nicely. Like what I write for the podcast, because
Yeah,
I want it to be a formal like story narrative podcast, like a
yeah.
well done one. So what I write for that can almost be just turned into a book with one click.
Yeah,
Almost.
it's nice trying to find those things in life which are, I guess, like with a little bit of extra effort, you can create a whole new thing from it. So I'm currently trying to study Spanish, like get my Spanish to like a really fluent level. And so not only doing the book reviews in English, but I'll transfer pretty much that directly into Spanish. And then I've got like a little Spanish channel where I'm just experimenting, I suppose. But yeah, it's pretty much like I've done 90% of the work, and then I can create like a whole new thing with just an extra little 10% of effort.
Yeah, right. I see what you mean. That's really cool, man. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
doing those sort of fun things. All right. So that was really cool, man. Really cool. Got a couple of quick fire questions. So they're quick fire from me, but take as long as you want to answer them as well. If you could post one thing to social media that everyone in the world would see at least once, what would it be?
I would post this article by Bonnie Ware, and it was the top 5 regrets of the dying. And so
Yeah.
do you know this one?
Yeah, we did a podcast on regret maybe a month or two ago, and I think we both Juan and I read that. But yeah,
Okay,
please explain. Yeah.
So the top 5 regrets she was a palliative care nurse for 20 years, and she recorded the top 5 regrets of the people in her care. And the number one was that people wished they had lived a life true to themselves and not what others had expected.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's just a point of departure for people to just, if you have something in your mind, get up there and do it, because these are people who are dying telling us this wisdom. So if there's no better place to get wisdom on earth than someone who's old and dying.
Yeah, like
and so if that's
the
what they're
most truthful
saying,
thing that'll there's
well,
no
they have the
ulterior
hindsight
motives.
of life. Yeah, they have the hindsight of life, the years lived, and now they're in a point where they know it's coming to an end. So things couldn't be clearer.
Yeah.
So we should look to our elders through this article and really do what you want to do, basically, and try not to live up to other people's expectations. Just do you. And then there was, there's 4 other points. I think the other one was people regretted working so much.
Yeah.
And that probably goes hand in hand with spending more time with family.
Yeah. An interesting one was not allowing themselves to be happy. So there was sort of like an internal conflict of that. yeah, I need to be in a different state other than happiness, which is, I guess we all strive for that in one way or another.
Mm. Or people are always thinking that things aren't good enough as they have them, and but they really are. So just kind of accept that things are actually okay regardless. It's always our wants. It's the capitalist society that's created this, but it's our wants and desires that are making us unhappy.
Yeah.
I think comparison is the thief of joy is a quote that I've heard that
yeah.
relates to that.
That's very sagely.
So that's what I'd want posted on social media for everyone to read.
Yeah, nice. What does the perfect day look like for you?
The perfect day is a day, just a general framework would be going out and doing something where I get a sense of progress or accomplishment. And then at the end of the day, spending my time with my family and either sharing that accomplishment or progress with my family or just vegging out on the couch, whatever.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's a great answer, because it's it can be very tempting to think about like one day in your life that was really, really amazing, but I suppose what's the the aggregate or the core of what that day consisted of. So you don't have to relive like going to the beach every day. You could go to the mountains or whatnot. And
but I think for me the progress and accomplishment is big, because if you go and you do something and you feel good about it, then you can share that goodness with your family at the end of the day. So you're hitting both. You're hitting the family need and the sense of accomplishment need. So you're more whole as a person.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Nice. One thing we talk about a lot on Mere Mortals is, I suppose, goal setting and planning, which is one thing that both Juan and I really, really get into. So what is one short-term and long-term goal that you have in place at the moment?
Okay. My short-term goal is to finish my podcast I'm writing, which is turning into a bigger project than I expected.
Yeah.
You don't just write a podcast. You have to learn how to write and tell a story and create the scenes and make them compelling. So I'm doing a lot of learning on that. But that's a short-term one.
How big do you think it'll end up being? Like a multi-part series or just like one continuous long-form one?
It'll be, I'm on about, I think I'm on chapter 8 now. So I reckon it'll be about 12 chapters. Yeah. And they should be about 40 minutes each. Like, it's a big story.
Yeah.
Everything I went through today is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of stories.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The other goal is to launch Pod Union, and if COVID sorts itself out, to get the mining started again.
Yeah. Nice. Excellent, man. And final one, if there was anyone in history that you could sit down with and have a one-to-one conversation with, so either alive or dead, who would that be? That'd be
Theodore Roosevelt.
The
21st, I think, president of the United States.
He was a very interesting guy.
Yeah, he was.
I'm trying to remember, when was he born? Like, what sort of era was?
He's like the late 1800s. Early 1900s. He was just he was a solid dude who was out there doing things, and he's not just like a statesman sitting in his office every day telling people how the world should be. He was out there. He was a hunter. He was a hiker. He led expeditions. He was a boxer. He was an avid reader, a writer, orator, obviously a politician. He got out there and did things. And I think that's what we need more of, people who are actually living a life and not in their offices or ivory towers making decisions. I think it'd be good. And he was a good example of that. The other thing was, he was a massive environmentalist and conservationalist, which is another thing we really need nowadays as well. So.
Yeah. Nice, man. Awesome. Well, dude, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. And I can definitely see us doing this again, and really looking forward to the podcast you're creating and all the things you're doing, man. It's really inspirational. Juan and I are taking a lot of I suppose inspiration from what you're doing. It's really great to see.
What you guys are doing is great as well. I'm actually impressed by the amount of stuff you pump out. I thought there was like a team of 10 people working behind the scenes.
No, it's me busy cutting up all the things we do, and thanks for that, man. Much appreciated.
Well, keep it up, and I like the direction you're taking it. So thank you very much, and I hope to do another one of these. I actually had some other things, so we'll save them for next time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think
excellent,
we
man.
could have another. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And if you want us to go on yours as well, yeah, open invitation.
All right, let's do it.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Kieran.
All right. Have a great day, Alex.
You too.
See
Thank
ya.
you.